Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's Not the Perkins from Electra Astrology. And would you believe that today we are veering into the land of sex? Yes, this is week 3 of our talks about Vesta. And I told you Vesta is a really interesting archetype. If you have missed the first 2 weeks, go ahead and listen to that. The way that I bring astrology to you is I am teaching it from the lens of psychology and spirituality so that you can know yourself better. There's a lot of spirituality 101 out there where teachers are promising you that you can heal, that you can manifest, that you can raise your vibration, and it's all as simple as that. And listen, sometimes that stuff works, but what I have found is that the number one key to making any sort of significant shift in your perspective, in your life, in your evolution, is knowing yourself. And right now, as we are looking at this divergence of timelines, it's very obvious right now. I'm sure that you've noticed it on a personal level. We can choose. Are we going down the path of fear, confusion, and powerlessness? One choice. Or are we going down the path of love, optimism, and empowerment? And although it's not quite that cut and dry, that's a simplistic way to name it. If you are listening, my guess is that you want to choose door number 2. And the fastest way to get there is by knowing yourself. Because when you know yourself, you are able to connect with your higher self, which is ultimately the connection with your source, with your version of God, whatever that is. That is where we have to learn how to trust the flow, but it's much easier to trust the flow when you have some semblance of understanding. So these teachings are designed to help you self-inquire, see your blind spots, your shortcomings, your historical difficulties, also your gifts and the skills, the things that you're bringing to the table. So I hope that you enjoy. If you are listening to this on the podcast, Star Narratives, you will be getting the astrological forecast for the week next. If you are watching on YouTube, the astrological forecast called The Path Ahead will be released Mondays. So make sure to check that out. I go through all of the transits and help make sense of them for you so that you can have the smoothest week possible. By the way, if you do not have your free ebook, I have one. You can find the link below if you're on YouTube, or go to my website at electraastrology.com to get your book. It's just a nice way to walk yourself through some of these archetypes and what they mean as you're listening to these teachings. I'm also re-releasing my previous zodiac teachings that I did all through 2024 on the podcast. I'm editing them and re-releasing them on YouTube, called Astrology for Awakening. So right now we are looking at Aquarius, and what an interesting time to be looking at Aquarius as Pluto has just entered. We are knee deep in having to deal with other people. And I don't know about you, but it's kind of rough out there. At any rate, let's go ahead and jump into Vesta. So the week before last, we covered this stuff around Vesta being your sacred flame, being that part of you that you want to connect with. If you want to establish a stronger relationship with higher power so that you can more easily surrender to what is, tap into optimism and trust, you're going to need to step into your temple every once in a while. And Vesta shows you where the temple is. In my 4th talk on Vesta, I am going to go through Vesta through the houses and the signs. That's going to give you a sense of where your temple is within your kingdom. That's the houses. And what kind of energy is happening in your temple. And that is the sign. If you have, as you know, I like to talk about each of us as our own personal kingdom. We have the sun, which is our king energy, the moon, our queen energy, Mercury is our messenger energy, etc. Now, in every kingdom, there's a temple. Where is your temple? What kind of temple is it? And it's important to know these things as you are trying to self-inquire and self-explore. So we talked about that. In episode 2 of Vesta, we talked about the Vestal Virgins and its association with Virgo and how it's so important to not give in to every single desire that you have. Just because you're craving sugar, you're craving alcohol, you're craving flirtation, you don't have to give into it. And in fact, it's important to make a purity pact with yourself because a lot of what keeps us from stepping into our temple and cultivating our sacred flame is distraction. This week, what we're going to talk about is we're taking a sharp turn away from this idea of virginity, of keeping ourselves as pure as possible so that we can step into that flame and tend to it and use it to enrich who we are and our connection to source. This week, we're going to talk about the sexual aspects of Vesta. So, if you've ever done a chart reading with me, you know that one of the things that I'm always interested in are the Vesta transits in somebody's chart when something new has swooped into their life, whether it's a new relationship or a new opportunity, and it is so captivating and so enticing. And at the same time, exists a little bit outside of time and space. So this might be the colleague that you have a crush on. You would never be able to have a relationship with this person because you both have very separate lives with no room for a relationship. This could be the spiritual teacher who you find yourself very enthralled with and you just want more of them. You want their attention. And you're probably not going to get it because you're the student and they're the teacher and they have to maintain a certain sense of distance. So I'm just giving you these examples so that you can begin to look at the idea of Vesta through this lens. So in pre-Hellenic Greece, this deviates a little bit from the mythology. So this is much earlier. The Vestals were actually priestesses of the moon. There's a lot of details to this storyline that I'm not going to go into, but Demetra George has a book called The Asteroid Goddesses, which goes into this in great detail. So if you're interested in this, you should check that book out. But essentially, these goddesses were fostering the fertilizing power of the moon. They looked at the sacred flame as the Kundalini energy. Let's stop there and unpack that. So think about this. When you are tending to your sacred flame, of course, part of it is going into that silent temple, praying, asking for guidance, opening up your intuition, tending to the messages that you're receiving. But there's a whole other part that's connected to the sacred flame that has to do with creation, creating something new, giving birth to a new idea, something very tangible. And we're looking at the cycles of the moon and how there are places within this cycle, the new moon, for example, where we go inward. We are quiet, we are tuned in, and closer to the full moon, we go outward and we are fertile, we are receptive, we are waiting for the new ideas. We're allowing the juice, the sparkle, the conception of something new into our lives because obviously it's not that we are nuns and monks. We are, in fact, here to experience life. We're here to experience the embodiment of pleasure, of the way that things feel and taste, and of sex. So these women that tended to this Kundalini type flame were known as Vestal virgins, but not because they were chaste, not because they were virginal, but because they essentially belonged to no man. At certain times of the month, certain places within the cycle, they gave themselves sexually to men, to strangers, to honor the goddess and take part in the sacred union. So take a deep breath into that. Get a sense of what is happening within your physical body. And you might actually want to think back to a time in your life where somebody or something showed up on the scene that blew your mind. That, wow, I want more of this. I want to get to talk to this person. I want more of this knowledge. I want to dive deeper into this experience. And how exciting that was. And the caveat is that this experience is also something that happened to you that you knew on some level. It wasn't like you were going to change your life for this. There were elements of your life that were in place that you knew It's not like I'll be able to marry this person, or it's not like I'll be able to dedicate my life to this set of teachings, but there's something very compelling. And so when I'm doing a chart reading, a lot of times what I see is that these Vestal things, this spark, this desire to enter into union with this thing, this idea, this person, this knowledge, wakes something up in us. It allows us to see what has been missing, what we have not had. And although it's not that we will be able to partake in this thing forever for the rest of time, it is short term. We can compare it to the Vestal virgins in this particular mythology having wild nights of abandon with strangers because they are honoring the moon. They are honoring the cycle. They are honoring the sacred union. They are bringing something into conception. And by the way, if these women conceived, these children belonged to no man and they were considered divine. They were given special status in the royal succession. So here we are with this Vestal energy that we all have somewhere within us. And like all of the asteroid energy tends to be triggered. With some people, it's strong in their charts from the get-go, but with other people, there's usually a transit or there's something that triggers it, that brings it to the forefront. So here you are in your own life, thinking back to a time when you got suddenly captivated and you knew that this exciting thing was here and it wasn't going to go away yet. It also was probably not something that was totally practical to integrate into your actual life, but it stirred something in you. It made you see the world in a different way. It made you realize what had been missing. Some form of conception happens. You eventually go on to bring more of this feeling into the world, but it's your feeling. It's not because you've partnered with that person. It's not because you've dedicated your life to this spiritual teacher or you have integrated this knowledge as your own. It's that you've taken in the seed that it planted within you. You allowed that seed to grow, and now what you have formed is something that belongs to you. So I'll give you an example. I have had many clients over the years who have come to me and they have been married, and there's a coworker, and they have essentially fallen in love with this coworker. The coworker may or may not be aware of it, but the client knows I would never leave my partner. And yet, oh, there's something so captivating about the energy of this other, the way they make me feel, the way this excitement makes me see myself. And eventually, what happens is that they realize there's something missing in their own marriage. There's some sort of flame that needs to be tended in their own marriage. It's not that they have to leave their marriage for this other person, because that rarely works out, let's face it. If they are in their Vestal energy and they are using that as the wake-up call, something has been missing. I have just been downloaded the feeling that has been missing in my life. And what I would like to do is create this feeling, this freshness, this aliveness, this sense of purpose, this sense of passion, this sense of sexual desire. I want to create that in my life. And I want that to be for me, not because of somebody else, not because my partner starts doing this, not because I begin to have an affair. It's that I have to figure out what it is that's missing, and I have to bring that into my life. And this is so cool because oftentimes what happens is that these Vestal relationships that come in are the catalyst for a new creative endeavor, going back to school, going on a retreat to another country that changes their lives. So we look at this Vestal energy, this particular facet of the Vestal energy. This one, by the way, is connected to Scorpio. So we would look at both Scorpio and Virgo as perhaps co-rulers of the asteroid Vesta. And this is the one where we have to go deep, we have to go deep into ourselves. We have to find the jewels, sort through the old stuff, the crap, to find what's glowing. And a lot of times what we find in that crap is it's just old casings from our old life, from our old trauma that have dulled us, that have brought us into a state of complacency, of boredom. We suddenly have the invitation to bring those jewels up out, polish them off, and look at them, admire them for what they are. So think about a time in your life where you might have had a Vesta transit. You don't need to look at your chart. You can probably come up with a time where you experienced this. You were feeling dull, drab, disconnected from yourself. Something came along that woke you up, that reminded you of who you were, that really ignited that flame again, but not just that flame of connection with God, connection with your higher power, but that flame of creativity, of vitality, of the desire to bring something new into the world that's just for you. So take a deep breath into that. Now, what I also find is that very consistently, if I'm working with a client and I say, tell me if you've had this experience, what year was it? We go back and we find that the Vesta in their chart has been being transited by a planet, or that Vesta in the sky is transiting a planet in their chart. So this is a really cool facet of the archetype to look at. With Taurus, we're also looking at birthing new things. This is the garden within the kingdom, right? But with Taurus, there's always this sense of practicality. You know, I have to grow the food to eat the food. And I grow the flowers because they're astoundingly beautiful and they smell good. But with Vesta, we are looking at how am I going to ignite this flame for myself? That's only for me. It's not for anybody else. It's for me. It's my creative project. It's my spiritual teaching. It's my beautiful erotic fantasy. And I don't need to share it with anybody, but I allow it to infuse my system and excite me. I use that exciting energy to propel me forward into what is new and what is next. All right, interesting food for thought. So I'll leave you with a question. Are you feeling bored? Have you lost your sense of passion and of purpose in some area? And if so, what is that area? You might want to write it down because next week I will be going through the signs and houses for Vesta, and you will find some answers to what am I supposed to do? So I'll give you an example. My Vesta is in the sign of Pisces, which means that when I feel dull and drab, I absolutely must seek out creativity. I must connect in with my higher power. I have to get quiet. I have to go into my temple to get the answer for what feels like it's missing. So sometimes we wait for somebody or something to show up and infuse us with this excitement. But it is also possible once we identify, I'm feeling drab, I'm feeling bored, then we make that pact with ourselves to spend more time in our temple, communing, asking for help, praying for guidance, and getting very excited about even the smallest, little, juiciest bits of excitement during our day. Because that builds up to really seeing the world through a different set of eyes, seeing the world through the eyes of being a goddess that is in flow with the cycles, that is fertile with new ideas, and that is eager to conceptualize, to conceive, to bring new things into her world. All right. I hope this was helpful.